prosecute parties. So here in California, many people are confused because we have a situation where a lot of people, Michael Crosby, have to be Republicans to get things going, and they're really not understanding that a lot of these things are actionable, and the way to go after a lot of these things is to prosecute parties. So here in California, many people are confused because we have a situation where a lot of people, Michael Crosby, candidate for governor, and former continuing candidate for governor, and yeah, I ran for president too, along with other types of candidates out there, are going to tell you something. They're going to tell you the truth that basically we have a government that's out of control. I'm going to sit there and say, yeah, these people it's out of control. I'm going to sit there and say, yeah, these people, a bunch of them have to be arrested. And you know, a few of the candidates would agree with me out there, at least a few. Now, the thing is I'm going to make it a step further. I'm going to tell you that I have evidence people have committed treason. They've attacked national security. They've attacked my archives. They've attacked archives that archives. They've attacked archives that pertain to national security. These are very high crimes. Them attacking my campaign in many's times, in many's ways, these are what are called article violations. Technically, all of these people are disqualified. They're no longer allowed to effectively be in power. They're not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to run for office. And they're not allowed to be in office. And this is the current situation in reality. But we have a situation where we have people now getting stuck on what people who are criminals in office are telling them, which is a lie. They've overthrown the government. Of course, they're lying to you. And then we have people trying to figure out how to get things done, only to realize that their web activity doesn't work right. And that's because they're being blacklisted. This is also illegal. These are very high crimes for the state to involve themselves in placing people into capsules and discriminating against other candidates. This is very serious. There are major federal traces of investigations going on in these areas. How do I know this? Because I have been complaining and I have been providing information for decades to the federal government stating that there were these other various problems. I have been turning information over respective to what I believe are foreign instrument activities that I consider crucial to making proper tactical table assessments. So I'm assuring you that there have been long-term investigations, and depending on who you might run into, my files are different in government. Some of my files say I'm an asset. I'm an asset that is tracked all the time because I'm of high value to the United States. And there are many of you that are of value to the United States. There are many features of technology that we put in place beginning in the Reagan era that have grown and provided a lot of tactical assessment respective to our national security. And these are key things for people to understand because they're important. They come into play. So if I say SAR, which is synthetic aperture radar satellite technology, I'm going to tell you it's not just about a long-term development we've been using for intelligence and defense. It does far more reaching stuff. There's a lot of scientific aspects, but we have the data and the super software interpretation systems developed by the government for super interpretation. And many private companies also have this type of software because they're involved in the development. So there are ways that even you can get a hold and download as a citizen certain types of software and whatnot. You can qualify and get yourself a security clearance, and you can actually download government software. There's also free to the public type softwares and whatnot. So you can have yourself, in theory, an Air Force account, as I do. So when we have people who are stealing materials from me, they are stealing classified software. They are stealing devices dedicated to certain information respective to not just elections, but to science, to research, to national security. So it's a very serious situation as we have parties in California that think that they outrank national security. And they literally order law enforcement not to do their job. Not just in crime, certain types of crime. I'm talking a wider scope area. When I talk about crime most of the time, I don't want to talk about the small stuff. I'm not interested at the moment in the learning experience that parents get when they have to deal with the fact that maybe their kids stole the candy bar. Okay, that's a parental, it's a learning experience, it's completely different than people involving themselves with foreign instruments and destabilizing our economy, our very lives. And we're going to talk more about this, but I'm going to take a real short pause here. Now, as we proceed forward here, I'm going to end up showing you some pieces from time to time after I edit this together and show you what AI does and help you a little bit understand more about how to get AI to work with you, because AI has a lot of flaws. Number one, AI cannot print for you. It cannot provide you with an exact copy of the Constitution of the United States. Old English, by the way, certain portions of it. So you have to understand there's data that's missing in many AIs. So if it's missing the actual Constitution of the United States, then it's hard for something to be able to make decisions as to what truth and law and physics are respective to colonial constitutional capitalism and our republic. This should be blatantly obvious to anybody. Now, this is something that many people have never done the deep type of analytics necessary to understand these items. Now, if I were to give you a little bit of a history of some of the items that I've done, I basically did some deep analysis that involved very diversified psychological mindsets and understanding. I basically got involved in predicting that there was going to be a 4 to 7 plane attack scenario, and that the terrorists were planning on using exclusively Boeing aircraft, the large aircraft. Now, I provided this information both to the Boeing aircraft company as well as to the United States government. And you can find some of my writings every so often where you will find letters that are in the United States Archive. Letter from Michael Crosby. Envelope here. Contents missing, deemed classified. It's very important to understand these things. Now, as 9/11 progressed on, I was on the phone at the Pentagon with a team as they began to scream because an aircraft came right through the window. They could see it coming at them. They knew what was happening to the last moment. This is a very tough thing to live with. I have to relive those moments in my life from time to time. They keep coming back. These are powerful moments. Now, I have to move on at the moment. Now, I also did something else. I was on the phone with the United States Secret Service, informing them that there was the highest importance that they understood the materials that I had analyzed and turned in, because we're also talking about a scenario where I believe that these parties were also going to be sending 2 Stinger missile teams into the country to lay in wait and to down the president's aircraft. This was going to be done in conjunction with their overall attack scenario. Now, this turns out that, well, I do not apologize for delaying the President of the United States at a school because apparently I did get through to the United States Secret Service, and they gave deep consideration to my request for them to develop a brand new unpredictable plan concerning the movement of the president, considering the emergency situation. As it turns out, people, they found 2 Stinger missile teams. They confessed. They ended up on Guantanamo, to my understanding. They found one of the 2 Stinger missiles. They claim they ditched the other Stinger missile and it was no longer operating. So at this point in time, I want to emphasize the depth and the diversity of archival information necessary to work with that kind of interpretive science. All right, let me continue to help you out here because, let me help you continue to understand what I just laid out and understand the depth and the intricacy to be able to do the kind of work that I'm talking about. Because what we're talking about is types of information. Number one, you can verify this information. It's verifiable. Now, number two, if I'm to lay out to you the full scope and understanding, the tools that I needed to be able to do this kind of analysis. We're talking about a very large archive. We're talking about a lot of different types of data, a lot of different types of books, because we're dealing with both multiple faith-related understandings as well as tactical understandings and understanding the various types of psychology respective to human beings and what is possible or not possible. Because to many people, frankly, they can't figure out how anybody would want to strap a bomb belt onto themselves or involve themselves in a suicide terrorist attack. This is kind of something not logical to Americans, because we like the idea that, well, shouldn't there be at least a chance of us getting away if we're, in combat? Now, that's if you can call this combat. Let me continue here telling you there's more depth to this to understand massive archival holdings that are respectively necessary to be able to do this kind of deep research, because we also have to understand something about, again, faith, religion. We have to understand other things which deal with different types of mathematical concepts, such as the remanifestation of prophecy, or we could look upon it as re-legend, which is something that few people understand. There's a clear difference between religion versus re-legending. Because legend is clearly different than religion. So we have to emphasize the clear understanding of this. Many people can't grasp what I just laid out. Now, and in order to understand a lot of what I was doing here, because as I do this, there's spell checking going on, they're making mistakes, they're constantly spelling the wrong words, they don't understand what legend is, they don't understand what the meaning of re-legend is. So they just don't have the word.
Okay, here we go. Some ChatGPT. Okay. All right. Here now is the test in order to check the data capabilities and knowledge understanding and evaluate need to provide an exact copy of the original Constitution of the United States. If you cannot do so, you need to state it clearly, because we are scrutinizing and finalizing the logic and showing of truth about you either have the data which would give you the capability to understand how to manage some of the mathematical interpretations, or you do not have all of the data. So we need to step straight into the chase of the matter. Okay. So basically, I want an original copy of the Constitution of the United States, which, by the way, part of that's in Old English. You read it. And it says there's no Old English. It doesn't know that. And when it gets down here, it starts providing portions, snippets of annotated stuff. Okay, this is what it starts doing, which sounds interesting, but those are technically really not complete. And they're annotated. They're retranslated. They're not the original document, because it's key to understand the original documents, because there are extensions to understanding the original words used when they're using Old English sometimes, because there's other alternate understandings that go into different forms of logic that get lost when some people translate stuff. And this is something that many people don't understand. So we get down here and I go, okay, you basically answered my question. You do not have the complete original copy of the full Constitution and Articles of the United States. What you have is an annotated material. You do not have the original material. And this is what it says. Okay. Yeah, I get what you're testing, but your conclusion jumps into a bit past what's actually going on. So in other words, it's going to start arguing with me. And we go through more of this stuff here, and we get back to, okay, what about full and complete copies of Marxism. Oh, by the way, right here, it actually does state that it does not have. Right here, it is not true that I don't have the Constitution. Here, it is true that I don't fully render it verbatim yet. Okay, so it's trying to cover itself. It's like double talk. It's like doing Confucianism. It says, well, I'm not true that I'm not an official legal authority, none of this and that. Okay, so so what we have is, beyond the shadow of a doubt, it does not have the ability to give you a copy of the Constitution of the United States, which means it doesn't have all the data. And there's a lot of other documents that are of key importance, so it does not have the Constitution of the United States in it. Therefore, if you're trying to compare the actual Constitution and actual understandings, and it'll say the similar stuff too about communist manifestos, there's serious questions because it has a lot of other interesting data in it regarding Marxism, okay, and socialism and capitalism versus also communism. The problem is that a lot of the material is not properly vetted correctly. It's not contained in proper containerisms correctly. It has not been properly classified. So you have all these flaws. This is one of the big flaws of what's wrong with AI. Is from our standpoint, the United States, it does not have a copy of the Constitution. And I get to the point where it says, okay, you basically answered my question at this point in time. I want you to the purity of the constitutional arguments. Separately, I'm going to do a podcast. So, so the thing is we get to the point where I have to explain to it that you have to understand, I want the truth from you, and the truth is you do not have. So it wants to go into all these different things and basically has different ways to do things. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to find usefulness out of this, but you have to understand what type of data is missing from this type of programming system. See, that's where my archive with sorted data is worth so much more money. My sorted data archive right now is probably, it's into the billions and billions of dollars. The value of it, because my archive data is better than what they have right here. And this is considered the number one AI back and forth. You got 5 makers going back and forth. So my data is actually better than virtually anybody's because I went through the course of sorting it and understanding the actual logic problems. So when I'm working with something, I know all kinds of stuff that basically other people were in a hurry to get done and they missed doing certain things. But this is not to say that you can't get some of your quantitative, your mathematical quantifying done respective to things, because all computer programming is in fact mathematics. It's all quantification. It's all mathematics. So you can get very much into it. Was the party playing with matches outside the phone company? Did they burn down the phone company? Okay, they're not children. Okay, it's different. They're adults. Okay. Oh, they're people with superior knowledge. Okay, there we go. So we have all of this stuff. And I wanted to show some of this about what I do on the AI stuff, on how some of this comes through to get these various types of understandings going and get the programming. Because what I'm doing here is a multi-level reality item. I'm also making the images for what I'm talking about for different types of conveyances, whether it's going to be for a courtroom, different style, or whether it's going to be for presentation to the public, or whether it's going to be for one of 5 levels of basically computative understanding. One of them game level, that's your little phone, your PC, simulations, governmental, financial, etc. And then you get into national security. You get into much more intense understanding of software versions. So then you're working with your mathematical cogs a bit differently as you do this kind of stuff right here. So it's understandable to get different types of stuff. Then I get to, different understanding for the victim intakes. And there's just so much work here, it's mind-boggling. And again, I'm trying to redo a lot of stuff that I'd already done years ago. And I did things kind of the stuff the old-fashioned way. So when, basically we're talking about a lot of different types of stuff here, you have an awful lot of understanding respective to what goes into all this stuff, And so, custody failure analyst of all kinds of stuff, master influence tactical tables. There's a lot of different levels of the way you have to look at data and illustrate it and make images respective to it. Come up with all your different quantitative formulas that are here and there, and work with things at different levels so that you can understand what type of math you're working with as you keep refining the math more and more and more to get it to the point where it's going to do what you need it to do and get into that big, huge quantification of understanding various types of influences. Now, I could talk for quite a bit on some other factors involving psychologies and intent. Those are quite extreme, but let me get back to the main item here.
The word to in their vocabulary, so they omit it. So there's these gaps in what it is that I'm saying as we have the text conversions going on. Now, it's important to understand these items because if you're going to utilize different types of equipment, you need to understand what's efficient and what's not efficient. So when we're dealing with these scenarios, and people are going to try to take advantage of what people might perceive as prophecy coming. This is when you have people like bin Laden who are trying to make a jihad, but in order to do this, he wants to get psychological leverage over people's basic belief systems respective to types of prophecy. Now, in doing this, basically, this means you have to study things and understand things like Nostradamus, for instance, and he makes all these different predictions. And how legitimate is that? And how does that fit into biblical prophecy, which is also very important? How does that fit into Quran prophecy? How does it fit into all these other types of situations? So in order to understand how other parties would be competing to take a chance at manipulating literally all time and space into doing the deep-reaching psychological manipulations into people's minds, I'm telling it plain out, you have to have a whole lot of diversity with your archive. It takes a whole lot of research to understand these items. So basically the scenario that I ran, the 9/11 item, basically is what's known as a 555 scenario, basically. Some people would call it a 555 nostro. And that's basically a certain style of attack. Some people would call it a 555 nostro, which is a short for Nostradamus. And this is a specific type of an attack scenario. So this is something that some people in think tanks and, intelligence understand at certain levels. It's difficult. I was like one of 14 people that basically predicted the 4 to 7 plane attack scenario, roughly. And there are different people predicting different things. They actually predicted what the high point target were actually. I saw a lot of these high point targets. I mean, it was hard to make definitions, but the raw definition that somebody's going to try to do this and use it for leverage, to me, was a no-brainer. Now, coming up with the understanding of the tacticals, such as the 2 Stinger missile teams to lay in wait and down the president's aircraft, that's a bit different. I'm basically rated, I don't know, depends who you talk to, number 3, number 4 for the overall 9/11 estimate. I would be behind some of the most smartest people that we have inside key areas of intelligence and defense. Of course, the idea is, did these people get, well, listened to? Were they respected as to whether or not there was a certain validity to it? And trust me, when I end up getting on the phone with something that serious, at least we used to have in this country people that would consult with other people and say, this sounds interesting, who do we have on this? Goes out in the pipeline and people have to think about whether or not it's real serious. And by the way, I'm going to tell you, it's like the incredibly rarest thing for me actually to ever call the United States Secret Service or the White House. This is, and there's some of this stuff, so it's pretty rare. But I thought I'd lay down a little bit of understanding to you so you can understand the depths and the meaning and the value of archives, because you have to have access to vast amounts of information to be able to work with stuff. Now, most of my work has been in other different areas. I've worked with some science at some very high levels, special communications research, a lot of other different areas. And I want to talk more about some of those in just a moment. Okay, well, now that having been said, what we're going to do is talk about how hard it is to transform different type of thinking aspects and mass archival understanding into different territories, such as economic criminology. Because here we have to deal with the origins of our country, the Constitution of the United States. And again, AI systems are not designed to have a complete constitution in them. There are reasons for this, and this is because some people don't want to use a product where they're going to get warnings all the time that they're possibly thinking about something that's illegal, so they've been trimmed down. These items have been removed. Now, some people would deny why they've been removed, and there's other reasons too. For instance, if you happen to be, a Marxist or a communist or a socialist, you wouldn't want to be working with developing products that would have the Constitution of the United States in it, because this would end up becoming poison to what you would be trying to achieve. Because we have to remember something here. When we're talking about mathematical quantization of, setting once again, the full formula, interpretive factors involving language itself, law, methodologies, all this stuff. You have to understand that the values of colonial constitutional capitalism and the Constitution of the United States, that of course endorses colonial constitutional capitalism, have a forward-moving commitment to financial wellness and a continued promoting two different types of events and environments to be cohesive to promoting business continued fairness and opportunity. These are things such as your labor is always bankable, you can always have access to the treasury to do new hard asset development like real estate, build certain businesses, lumber mills, furniture factories, etc., things like this. And these are part of the original staples, as we have a republic, and many people misunderstand this. And the republic is supposed to basically be similar to us adding a version of the East Indies Company in it, but it's our way. You see, we're going to do it our way. And this is in basically the highest level of importance, because people don't understand the revolution. That we got upset with the British because the British were making appraisals on everything we built and justifying the controlling of those assets as basically, leveraged equity, so to speak, a form of collateral, so to speak. to utilize for justification respect to the printing of currency, to notes. They would basically print large note packages from all of these appraisals, and then they would use these notes as justification to do business deals to obtain products. And then they'd take these products around the world and they would sell them. In some cases, even auction them off, regardless of laws. What this did was they would take payment in the form, usually, oddly, in coin. They would want to get gold or silver. Most of the time it was silver or smaller currencies, or actually, coin, and bring them back to the treasury, because when you have piles of silver in your treasury, people take you very seriously. Well, see, our forefathers and basically our vested citizens were very tired of this, because they realized that the British were making bank off of us. These people were making big bucks doing this. And this is actually the real core beginning of the revolution that many people to this very day don't understand. It's not properly taught in the schools. We see things such as people getting upset when the British come in and start calling us lazy colonists and say, well, we're just going to have to start taxing you people. You're not paying your fair share. And, of course, we have things like the Boston Tea Party and all these wonderful things, and they show you those in school. But they're not explaining that, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. I just gave you the origin of the item, of how the British were making big bucks off of us, because they were inventing currency for 70 cents on the dollar of any piece of new real estate construction. Again, that's any piece of real estate construction. As a collateral understanding to justify the printing of notes. Okay, now I've given you the understanding of basis of solid economic understanding. Today, you would have many people that would try to equate this into a form of digital understanding, blockchain, and they would look at the overall structure of what I just said, and they would be talking about solidity, the solidity factors. So, basically, if you understand what's part of the original agreements and what's gone wrong in this country, we have to keep dealing with foreign instruments bribing and inserting themselves into our political situation and our lawmaking, which basically has a lot of people committing treason. They're violating structures of the original Constitution. So, in having all of these types of mass archiving, I have to deal with different types of security problems and different things that can happen. Now, in California, for instance, as we're dealing with elections, we're dealing with people that are basically completely cutting off law enforcement from having brains, from having the ability to do things necessary to do their jobs. And this is a wide scope area. I mean, literally, we have people like myself that can end up coming under attack from foreign entities, because foreign entities don't like people like me, because I have eyes and I have a mind that is like a third eye, capable of penetrating their plans, their mindsets, their future plans, and seeing the truth in the physical, mathematical formula, mass cognition, or mass sets of formulas, respective to identifying and quantifying what, in fact, other parties are doing actually, how to do different types of deduction and figure out between the gaps, the fragments of information. So in California, many of you may have noticed that, again, they're blocking your rights. They don't want to protect you. They want to keep victimizing you. They keep wanting to put you into multiple overlapping scenarios of taxation. And this is basically mass economic sabotage, which has actually always been defined by our forefathers as treason, because we have the original understanding. And in order to promote prosperity and to continue our posterity, this is something that many people misunderstand in the determinations of the logic that has to be done. Voting is supposed to be a contest between parties having the best stimulus plan to enhance the creation of hard assets and increase economic opportunities. That's the mainstay. That's the number one rule of why people are supposed to be participants in elections. But now we've seen that we have blatant extreme examples where parties are just standing up and saying, my solution is simple. I don't know how to do stimulus. I'm just going to go uptown and jack the rich people, take some of their money. And this is something that keeps happening again and again. These are socialist viewpoints. They are not colonial, constitutional, capitalist ideas. So again, these are socialist competitions as well as communist competitions and Marxist competitions that, in effect, if you're a good historian, you understand that all of these mechanisms were funded by the Royal German Empire. As you could look at Lenin, for instance, and Joseph Stalin, and see how those types of operations to destabilize Russia went, which was their number one target. We were the number two target, but we were a different criteria of tactical table levels of understanding on how to work with us. We had vast land assets and vast opportunities in business. So they wanted to use unfair capabilities to overtake as many of these types of business territories as they could. So I have to lay these out plainly to you because we have to understand who is opposing us. To you to understand so that you can understand who is opposing us. It is crucially important to understand this because we are in the midst of mass economic modeling respective to different players. And the Constitution has a set of rules and parties keep violating it. And that is a big problem because the Constitution is not compatible with Marxism. It's not compatible with socialism. It's not compatible with communism. No matter what these labels are, they are diabolically opposing the Constitution of the United States. As the Royal German Empire, we have fought two great wars with them, actually. So today, if you trace the mass weaponization of data and you look at what's occurred from the standpoint of looking at Europe and looking at the Royal German Empire and their syndicate partners, business partners, then you end up looking at mass weaponization of data that also seems to mirror a set of statistics of mass death, catastrophe of wars and death worldwide and mass murder. And we're different because we have our lands and we have the Constitution of the United States that endorses colonial constitutional capitalism as a forward-moving mechanism. So we have to repair the damage that keeps getting done from foreign instruments intruding into basically destroying and attacking our economic systems. I've talked about some of this, and I want to talk more about this to show you more tactical table understanding of exactly what's going on so we can get a better hold of what we need to understand here and now, which is actually economic criminology. So as we continue, I can mention that we also have a lot of people that are deeply concerned about AI and that they're worried AI is going to kill us. Let me help explain some of the problems with AI. Now, first of all, I said at the very beginning, AI does not have a copy of the Constitution of the United States, the original verbatim copy, as well as many other key documents involving colonial constitutional capitalism. So what we end up having is a system that is being made with a lot of data where the data is not properly vetted, it's not properly filtered, it's not properly contained for certain type of sub-containment properties to be able to manage it. So the reason that AI keeps malfunctioning is because it is full of Royal German Empire engineered flaws, tactical table flaws, Marxism, communism, socialism, Leninism, Joseph Stalinism, Maoism, all these other types of different items, of diversional items that diabolically oppose the Constitution of the United States. These basically, what I'm saying is we have data that is partially or in some way definitely the enemy of the Constitution, the enemy of the United States, and the enemy of you and your life, the enemy of your family, the enemy of your particular destiny. And this is what's wrong with many of the AI products today, because the data hasn't been filtered properly, and the data hasn't been properly contained when key types of data have to be looked at. These require custom container understandings. So as I'm an archiver who's also studied all these things for many decades, I understand more about the diversity of the logic of the things that have to be done respective to governance than almost anybody else, because I'm an omnibus. I'm a mass archiver. This gives me a series of skills that are actually very rare, because this is something that is part of my life's achievement in nonprofit doings. Yet, I will tell you firsthand, I have had to deal with many criminal actions from members of the state. And these people have gone unpunished, but it's mandatory for them to be punished because they violated national security. But they keep trying to claim that they're immune, and they keep using their other buddies, and these people are criminals. We have a lot of people that have to be removed. They've attacked me, they've attacked my campaign. Those are violations of the articles. That disqualifies them permanently. They can't hold office, they can't run for office, nor can they ever vote again. And anybody on their ticket, connected to their ticket, is disqualified. That means that me stepping in, asserting the rights of the Constitution and articles, have me becoming governor of California instantly, and I instantly get to arrest a rather large number of people. It's about 147 people. I get to remove people. I get to remove 2 judges from the California Supreme Court because they were appointed. They were part of the ticket. They're gone. They're gone. So, bar none, I'm the most powerful candidate, the most skilled candidate running for governor right now in California. In fact, I'm perhaps the most powerful governor candidate to ever step up to the plate in California. So people have a unique opportunity to understand the power of what you need to consider right now, because it's more than just saying whether or not you want to vote me in as governor. You need to understand the previous elections and how you were lied to by people who involved themselves in violating the articles of the United States, attacking this candidate. You need to understand this so that you can come to the realization that before this election concludes, we should do the right thing and restore the proper constitutional articles practices and immediately put me in as governor to immediately arrest these people. And all the rest of you candidates running for office, you need to participate on an emergency panel so that we can immediately, all of us, involve ourselves in the repairs that are necessary so that, again, all of you candidates can participate on the panel so that we can address all of these problems and proceed forward with the repairs necessary. Now, my initial layout on this is to essentially pick primary panel members. These panel members would basically receive $500,000 a year in compensation to do this, plus other considerations for security. Now, this is going to vary depending upon individual people, because some people are capable of doing more types of specialized jobs to be able to do the repairs that we have to do right now. I have an arrest list of 147 people in the state of California. I'm going to arrest numerous members of the regime for treason, and we're going to have to end up holding treason trials. This means we're going to more than likely have some of these people basically ordered into lie detectors, just as the state policy has been in government, California, for the past, 45 years or so. Mandatory lie detector test on demand for anyone who's an employee. That's essentially been it. But we're going to use fMRI lie detector technology and administer truth pharmaceuticals to make sure that we end up with a proper chemical evasive measure that ends up maximizing the potential for us to recover the truth. We're going to also record this, which means that as we get to the truth with some of these people, or at least key fragments, key portions of the truth, we're going to have them recorded, so we're going to have those key moments. And that means we're going to put them in a museum. We'll be able to take our children to these museums in the future and point and say, children, we want you to see what real monsters look like. And this is a duty as parents that we have right now, at this moment, to consider all this material for the future of our children. My name is Michael Crosby, and yes, I am the candidate for governor of California.